Thank you guys for hanging out. We're trying out a new kind of format here for tips. I'm sitting here in the studio, just got done fishing for big smallmouth. And while this is fresh on my mind, I wanted to just go ahead and give you a few tips on how to downsize. And it's not as simple as selecting the smallest lure in your tackle box and going out and trying to get as many bites as possible. There are a bunch of things we should consider, whether you're tournament fishing or fun fishing, when it comes to downsizing and selecting the proper lure for that day of fishing.
There's no bait fish in here, so the drop shot's not very good.
So fall time of the year or early winter time, as the temperatures start to drop, we all know, we've all read about it. The fish go to the backs of the pockets. They chase the shad. They're feeding up for the winter. But each and every day is so different. There's no one book you could read about that single day of fishing. So what I want to do is just trying to kind of open your mind into how this bait selection process works. This particular day, just yesterday, I started out with a 7-inch swim bait, and I had a lot of followers on it, like lots and lots of followers. I simply went to the dam section of this particular lake I was at, and after a few casts, I visually saw, not only on front-facing sonar, but visually saw with physically with my two eyes, like 5 and 6 pound smallmouth just chasing my swim bait to the boat. And I get questions all the time. Hey, what do you do to those followers, those swim bait followers? How can you catch those swim bait followers? Well, you really have like a 25 to 30% chance of catching those followers. And a lot of times it means slowing down and downsizing. So what I like to do on any lake, any time of year, is start out with the biggest lure I could possibly get away with. 7-inch swim bait, full-size top waters, oversized jerk baits, medium-sized jerk baits, and then just, regular, medium to square bill size crankbaits. So in my opinion, it's really good to kind of run the gamut of lures on that body of water you're fishing that day. Couple of things to consider as we're going from 7-inch swim baits, full-size top waters, medium-sized jerk baits. I even pulled out an old school wigglewort yesterday thinking something would happen, and it didn't. So we had to keep on downsizing from there. I even made a comment yesterday, hey, let me pull out a drop shot just to get a bite. I know that there are smallmouth in this fishery. I know that a drop shot works everywhere, right? Wrong. And this particular case, you really need to consider 3 major things while you run through the gamut of lures, while you start that process of downsizing. 1, you really need to consider the forage. When I talk about that drop shot, hey, I thought this was going to be a gimme. I'm seeing smallmouth follow my swim bait. I'm seeing them nudge a topwater. I'm seeing them follow a jerk bait. I thought, well, I could pick up a drop shot, dangle a nice little drop shot lure in front of their faces, and hey, I'll get a bite doing that. That's not necessarily the case, because you need to consider what the forage is in that lake you are fishing. This particular lake I was fishing, it's weird to say, but there were no shad in it. So the little minnow style bait that I was representing on that drop shot, they would not touch it. Absolutely not touch it. So you need to consider the forage when we're starting to downsize. For example, if you know crawfish are in that in that body of water, of course you want to go with a sort of a tube, any type of Ned rig, a small jig, something like that. You got to look for the clues. If you catch a fish, kind of look down their gullet, see if there's any fins hanging out, there's pinchers hanging out. Look for those little clues. Another thing you need to consider is past history, whether it's tournament history or history you have on that lake prior. Knowing what type of forage or what lures particularly do well, you can make your selection from there. Just downsize a little bit from there. Third thing you need to consider is aggressiveness. Looking at forward-facing sonar, whether these fish are coming in hot for your lure, chasing it, or they're just absolutely doing cartwheels over your top water. Hitting your spinner bait, hitting your swim bait, whatever it is. Look for the aggressiveness, and also with that. That helps you select, let's say, you're having a lot of fish kind of follow your larger lures to the boat, but they're not committing. Okay, yes, we need to downsize, but look at the aggressiveness there. Okay, are we going to have to downsize to a small swim bait or a small spy bait up higher in the water column, or are we going to have to downsize to something on the bottom a lot slower? In this particular case, the kind of the winning combination for me was determining, hey, there are no shad in this particular lake. You know, I talked to a dude on the bank, and, you know, those are clues as well. Talked to a guy on the bank. Oh, you know, they eat crawfish here. So in my mind, I'm thinking small, you know, tube, or, you know, 2.5-inch tube, or a Ned rig, something on the bottom, something really, really slow. You know, I'm just using all those little clues to my advantage. So I didn't need something up high in the water column where they're actually aggressive chasing small things. The thing that really paid off was paying attention to all the different clues, and then finally running through 5, 6, 7 different baits, and finally landing on a small 1/8-inch tube. And as soon as I did that, bam, 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 I started getting bites. So, and to kind of summarize, there's really no certain or particular formula to get to that tube in this particular case. That small little tube that works so well, that small Ned rig that works so well. You really have to take into consideration all the different clues and put them all together. Essentially, that's what we do as tournament fishermen, is a huge process of elimination. And what makes a really great tournament fisherman, the best tournament fisherman that week or that day, is gathering all those clues I'm talking about. You know, gauging the aggressiveness of the fish, making those correct adjustments. Okay, so they're not biting the trout swim bait. Let's try a jerk bait. They're not biting the jerk bait. Okay, oh, there's no shad in there. Simple Google search. Okay, forage of this particular lake. Those little things all together help you get to that end bait or that end goal to make you successful. And in this case, again, it was just a little 1/8-ounce tube, and I'd watch the fish kind of follow it down on forward-facing sonar. And one particular step further we could take with that, once you have the right profile, size, and forage imitator, is the retrieve itself. And what I found this particular day, and it varies from day to day, but I want you to consider kind of how aggressive you're popping that little tube off the bottom. Generally speaking, the slower the water temperatures, the slower the fall, the slower we want to work our bait. So this particular day, we had water temperatures in the 50s. You know, whatever lake you choose to fish this fall, this winter, as you see those temperatures falling from, you know, 59 all the way through 51, sometimes in the 40s. Generally speaking, you just want to move it really, really slow, and that is no exception on this particular day. Just as soon as you shook the bait, the fish would run away. So that's just something to consider as well. And taking it one step further in selecting that smaller finesse bait is just kind of moving it nice and slow, maybe giving it a pop every now and then, vary your retrieve until you find that optimal retrieve. Again, use all the clues and all the visuals to your advantage, like how they're reacting to the bait once you move, once you move through the different types of retrieves. You know, with all this, there's one huge misconception in bass fishing, and over all the years I've been fishing out West California, down here in Texas, up in the Sierras, wherever it might be, Great Lakes. The biggest misconception, in my opinion, is, oh, the water's so cold, it's fall, it's winter time, you have to fish so slow, fish slow. That's a huge misconception. Like I said, running the whole gamut of lures really puts you at an advantage of catching more fish that day, or an advantage on that tournament day, that weekend, that weekend series tournament, or that club tournament, whatever it is. So I encourage you to not only start with, the larger than normal lures, but faster than normal lures. I think it's a huge misconception that you have to slow down, fish slow on the bottom. And although this particular day we caught a lot of fish on that really micro tube, fishing it slow on the bottom, that's not always the case. It just happened to be the case yesterday, but I really like to almost speed up this time of year. That's why I pulled out the swim bait and running it fast, and the jerk bait running it fast. I pulled out an old school wiggle wart and I was running it and crashing it fast, and I got a lot of reactions, but ultimately we had to slow down. But the biggest misconception, as those water temperatures get to 55 and lower, even into the 40s, man, sometimes if you speed up, you could catch some of the biggest fish in your lake during the fall, because yes, they do want to feed up for the winter time, and yes, they can be aggressive. It's just up to us as fishermen to kind of find that more aggressive fish, those more aggressive groups. So the next time you guys head out this time of year, as the water temperatures start to fall, do yourself a favor and go through that whole gamut, go through the lineup, go through your favorite swim baits, go through your favorite, spinner baits and traps and crankbaits. Fish fast, fish aggressively. And by the end of the day, hopefully you'll have a few clues and to determine the actual size of bait fish and forage the fish are eating, leading to more fish caught, bigger fish caught, and more tournaments won. So thank you guys for hanging out. This was a lot of fun. This is kind of a different setting. We're here in the studio, but this is just kind of a tip I'd like to give you guys for the fall winter transition here. And hopefully you guys use a little bit of what we talked about today and catch a lot of big fish.